11 subtle, everyday habits that destroy your car. Right now, while you are driving to work, picking up your kids, or just backing out of your driveway, you could be quietly killing your car. Not with one big crash, not with one huge mistake, with tiny, everyday habits that feel completely normal. Habits so small you probably do at least half of them without even thinking about it. And here is the part that should scare you a little. Your car will not warn you. No light pops up on the dash, no alarm goes off. Your car just quietly wears down, piece by piece, deep inside where you cannot see it. Until one day you are standing in a repair shop, staring at a bill for thousands of dollars, wondering how it happened. Today, we are digging into 11 of these hidden habits. Some of them will genuinely surprise you. A few of them you are probably doing this very week without even realizing it. By the end of this video, you will never look at your daily drive the same way again. I have spent years pulling engines apart and fixing cars that other people had already given up on, and I keep seeing the exact same mistakes over and over again. So let's break them down, one at a time, starting with a habit that almost every single driver does without a second thought. Habit 1. Riding your brakes down hills. Picture this. You are driving down a long, steep hill. Instead of tapping your brakes on and off, you just rest your foot on the pedal and hold it there the whole way down. It feels smooth. It feels safe. It feels like the right thing to do. It is actually one of the most damaging habits you can have. Here is why. Your brakes work by using friction. Two hard surfaces rub against each other to slow your wheels down, and that friction makes heat. A quick stop at a red light makes a small burst of heat that goes away fast. But when you hold the brake down for a long time, like the whole way down a mountain road, that heat has nowhere to go. It just keeps building and building. Think about rubbing your hands together as fast as you can for 10 minutes straight. At first, they feel warm. After a few minutes, they start to burn. That is basically what is happening inside your brakes. Except instead of skin, it is metal and rubber. And instead of 10 minutes, it can happen in just 2 or 3 minutes on a steep enough hill. All that trapped heat causes real damage. Your brake rotors, which are the metal discs your brake pads squeeze against, can actually warp from the heat, kind of like how a plastic ruler bends if you leave it too close to a heater. Once a rotor warps, you will feel it every time you brake. Your steering wheel shakes. Your whole car shudders when you slow down. The heat also cooks your brake pads, making them harden and crack, which leads to that awful squealing and grinding sound. And it does not stop there. All that heat can boil the brake fluid inside your brake lines. Brake fluid is supposed to stay liquid so it can push your brakes evenly. Once it gets too hot, it breaks down and gets dirty, and your brakes start to feel soft and spongy. So what should you do instead? This is where your gears come in. Every car, even an automatic, has a way to shift into a lower gear. Some cars call it manual mode. Some have paddles behind the steering wheel. Some just have an L or a 2 on the gear shifter. When you shift into a lower gear going downhill, the engine itself helps slow the car down. Instead of your brakes doing all the work through friction, the engine resists being spun so fast by the wheels, and that resistance slows you down naturally. Your brakes barely have to do anything at all. A lot of people worry this will hurt their transmission. It will not. Transmissions are built to handle this. What actually costs you money is doing the opposite. Riding your brakes down just 2 or 3 long, steep hills can be enough to warp a rotor. If you have a hill like that on your daily drive to work, you could end up replacing brake parts every couple of months, and that adds up to a small fortune over a year. Before we move on to the next habit, if this kind of information is new to you, hit that subscribe button now. Not just for me, but for yourself. The next few habits on this list are even sneakier than this one, and one of them can quietly wreck a part of your engine before you even leave your own driveway in the morning. You are going to want to know exactly how to avoid it. Habit 2. Letting your tire pressure slowly drop. Here is something that catches almost every driver off guard. Even a brand new tire, straight off the shelf, is losing air right now. Not because of a leak or a nail, just because that is what tires naturally do. Air molecules are small enough to slowly seep through the rubber itself, kind of like how a balloon left in the corner of a room will be smaller and saggier a week later, even though nobody touched it. Most tires are supposed to be filled somewhere between 30 and 45 pounds of pressure, depending on your car. A healthy tire can lose several pounds of pressure every single month just sitting there. Cold weather makes it worse because cold air shrinks, which drops your tire pressure even faster. The problem is that a lot of drivers wait for the little tire pressure warning light on the dash before they do anything. That light usually does not turn on until your tire pressure has already dropped to a dangerously low level, sometimes down around 20 pounds. By that point, you have already been driving for weeks or even months on tires that are far too soft. So what actually happens when your tires run low? Think about walking around all day in shoes that are 2 sizes too big and completely flat, with no support left in them. Every step feels harder. Every step wears out more of the shoe in the wrong places. That is exactly what is happening to your car. A low tire creates more drag against the road, which means your engine has to work harder just to keep the car moving at the same speed. That extra effort burns more gas, so your fuel economy quietly drops without you noticing why. At the same time, the shape of the tire changes when it is underinflated. Instead of resting evenly on the road, the edges of the tire bulge out and wear down much faster than the middle. That uneven wear can shave months, sometimes years, off the life of a tire that should have lasted much longer. It gets worse. Underinflated tires also put extra strain on your steering system, especially your power steering pump, because it has to fight harder to turn wheels that are not rolling smoothly. Over time, that added stress can wear out steering parts long before they should fail. The fix for this one takes almost no effort at all. Once every few weeks, check your tire pressure with a simple gauge that costs less than a cup of coffee, or check the readout on your dashboard if your car has one built in. If a tire is 5 or 10 pounds low, fill it back up. The correct number for your car is usually printed right on a sticker inside the driver's door, not on the tire itself, since the number on the tire is the maximum, not the ideal amount. That is it. A 2-minute check every few weeks can save you hundreds of dollars in tires and steering repairs down the road. Now let's talk about a habit that can quietly destroy one of the most expensive parts hiding inside your gas tank. Habit 3. Driving around on an almost empty tank. We have all done this one. The gas light flicks on, and instead of stopping right away, you tell yourself you will fill up later. Then later becomes tomorrow. Then tomorrow becomes a few days from now. Some drivers make a habit out of running their tank down to fumes over and over again, week after week, without ever really filling it up all the way. Here is what almost nobody realizes. The fuel pump, the part that pushes gas from your tank to your engine, is not just sitting in your tank surrounded by air. It is supposed to be sitting inside a pool of gasoline. That gasoline actually cools the pump down and keeps it lubricated while it works. Once your tank gets very low, the fuel starts sloshing around instead of sitting still, especially when you turn corners, speed up, or slow down. That means the pump starts sucking in little pockets of air instead of gas. Without enough fuel surrounding it, the pump has nothing to keep it cool. It starts to overheat, sort of like running a hairdryer with the vents blocked. It can still work for a while, but heat is quietly wearing it down from the inside every single time it happens. The really painful part is where this pump is located. In most cars, the fuel pump sits down inside the gas tank itself, which usually means the whole tank has to be dropped out from under the car just to reach it and replace it. That is a lot of labor, and a lot of labor means a lot of money. Depending on the car, a fuel pump replacement can easily cost between $1,000 and $2,000. The fix here could not be simpler. When that gas light comes on, do not treat it as a suggestion. Treat it as a deadline. Fill up soon and try to avoid making a habit of running the tank all the way down to empty. Keeping at least a quarter tank most of the time gives that pump enough gas around it to stay cool and last as long as it is supposed to. Now, you might think the answer is to just fill your tank as full as humanly possible every single time, so you never have to worry about it. That leads us straight into our next habit, and it is one that can be just as expensive. Habit 4. Topping off the tank. After the pump clicks off. A lot of drivers love squeezing every last drop of gas into the tank. The pump clicks off, and instead of stopping, they squeeze the handle again. Click. Squeeze again. Click. They keep going until gas is nearly spilling out over the top of the filler hole. It feels like getting a great deal, more gas for the same trip to the station. This habit can actually damage a part of your car that has nothing to do with the liquid gas itself. Every car has a system built to deal with gasoline fumes, called the evaporative system. Its whole job is to trap the fumes coming off the gas in your tank so they do not just float out into the air and pollute the environment. Part of that system includes a filter, often made of charcoal, that is designed to soak up vapor, not liquid gas. When you keep clicking the pump after it shuts off, you are forcing liquid gasoline up into passages that were only ever meant to carry fumes. That liquid gas can soak into the charcoal filter, which basically ruins it, kind of like pouring water directly onto a sponge that was only ever meant to soak up steam. Once that filter is soaked and clogged, the whole evaporative system can start malfunctioning, which can trigger warning lights, hurt your fuel economy, and lead to a repair bill that runs anywhere from $200 to $800 just for that one part. The truth is, that automatic click when you are filling up is not random. It is a safety feature built specifically to stop you right at the point your tank is actually full. Squeezing the handle a few more times might get you an extra quarter gallon of gas, worth maybe $1 or $2, but the potential damage it can cause is worth hundreds of times more than that. So the rule here is simple. When it clicks, you are done. Walk away. Your gas tank and your wallet will both thank you. Now, let's shift gears, quite literally, into a habit that puts a shocking amount of strain on one of the most expensive parts of your entire car. Habit 5. Shifting gears. Before the car fully stops. This next one is a big one, because fixing the damage it causes can cost you thousands of dollars. There are 3 versions of this habit, and almost every driver has done at least one of them without thinking twice. The first happens when someone is in a hurry. They back out of a parking spot, and while the car is still rolling backward, they slam it into drive and hit the gas before the car has actually come to a complete stop. Think about how it feels when you are running, and you suddenly try to sprint the opposite direction without stopping first. Your knees and ankles take a hard, twisting hit. That is basically what happens inside your transmission when you force it to reverse direction while the car is still moving. All that weight, still traveling one way, suddenly gets forced to go the other way, and the internal parts of the transmission take the full brunt of that shock. The second version happens when a driver is still rolling slightly and slams the gear shifter into park before the car is completely still. Inside your transmission, there is a small metal piece called the parking pawl. Its whole job is to slide into place between the teeth of a gear and lock the car so it cannot roll. If the car is still moving even a little bit when you shove it into park, that small piece gets forced to catch a gear that is still spinning. It is like trying to jam a stick into a moving bicycle wheel. It usually catches with a hard, sudden jolt instead of sliding in smoothly. The third version happens when someone shifts into gear and immediately stomps on the gas before the transmission has actually finished engaging. Automatic transmissions need a small moment, just a split second, to physically shift into the gear you selected. If you gun the engine during that split second, you are forcing the internal clutches to slip and grind against each other instead of locking together smoothly. That slipping creates extra heat and extra wear every single time it happens. Doing any of these once in a while by accident is not the end of the world. But if it becomes a daily habit, all that repeated strain adds up. Transmissions are already one of the most expensive parts of any car to repair, often costing more than the car itself is worth in some cases. A full transmission rebuild or replacement can easily run into several $1,000s. The fix is almost embarrassingly simple. Just wait until the car has come to a full and complete stop before you shift gears, and give the transmission that split second it needs to fully engage before you press the gas. It costs you nothing but a second or two of patience, and it can save your transmission for years longer than it would otherwise last. Here is where it gets interesting, because our next habit happens before you even start driving anywhere at all. Habit 6. Letting your car idle and warm up for too long. A lot of drivers grew up believing you always have to warm your car up before driving it, letting it sit and idle in the driveway for 10, 15, even 30 minutes before pulling out. Some people do it in winter to warm the engine. Some people do it in summer just to cool down the inside of the car before they get in. Here is the twist almost nobody expects. Sitting still and idling is actually one of the slowest ways to warm up a modern engine. Older engines from decades ago genuinely did need a longer warm-up. Modern engines are built so efficiently that idling in the driveway barely raises the temperature at all. If you let your car idle for 20 minutes, hoping it reaches full operating temperature, it might still be far from it by the time you finally start driving. That means you just spent 20 minutes running the engine in a cold, inefficient state for absolutely no benefit. While an engine is cold, the computer inside your car runs what is called a rich fuel mixture, which basically means it dumps extra gasoline into the engine to help it run smoothly while everything is still cold. That is normal and expected for the first few seconds. But the longer you keep the engine sitting there cold and idling, the longer that rich extra fuel condition continues. All that extra unburned fuel can lead to a buildup of a sticky, sludgy carbon residue on the internal parts of your engine, similar to the black soot that builds up on the inside of a candle glass that never gets cleaned. Over time, that buildup can affect how smoothly your engine runs and can even contribute to expensive repairs down the road. So what should you actually do? Start the car, give it just 10 to 30 seconds to make sure oil is flowing, and then start driving gently. Avoid flooring the gas pedal right away, but light, normal driving is actually the fastest and healthiest way to bring an engine up to its proper operating temperature, far faster than sitting still ever could. This next habit also happens before you are really driving, and it slowly grinds away at a part of your car that is far more expensive to replace than most people expect. Habit 7. Turning the steering wheel while the car is standing still. This one is called dry steering, and almost everyone does it without even realizing they are doing it. Dry steering simply means turning your steering wheel while your car is completely stopped, not rolling at all, usually while trying to squeeze into a tight parking spot. It feels harmless. It feels like something you have to do to line up a tricky parking space. But think about it this way. Imagine pressing your hand flat against a rough sidewalk and twisting it back and forth without ever lifting it up. That constant grinding against one single spot wears a mark into your skin fast. Now imagine that same twisting motion happening to the rubber of your tire, pressed against rough pavement, over and over again, every single day. When your car is not rolling and you turn the wheel, your tire has to twist against the ground instead of rolling smoothly across it. All that force gets concentrated into one small patch of rubber instead of being spread out along the tire's whole surface. That patch gets scrubbed and worn down far faster than the rest of the tire. It also puts serious strain on your power steering system since the pump has to work much harder to force the tires to twist without the help of forward motion. Over time, this extra strain can wear out steering components long before they should naturally fail. The fix takes barely any extra effort. Instead of turning the wheel while completely stopped, get the car rolling just slightly, even a few inches, before you start turning. That tiny bit of motion lets your tires roll into the turn instead of grinding against the pavement in place. It is such a small change in habit, but it can add real years to the life of your tires and your steering system. Now let's move on to a habit that looks completely harmless on the surface but can quietly rot away parts of your car that you rarely ever see. Habit 8. Letting dirt, grime, and salt build up underneath your car. Most people think of washing their car as something you do to keep it looking nice. What a lot of drivers do not realize is that skipping washes, especially skipping the underside of the car, can lead to some genuinely expensive damage hiding out of sight. When dirt sticks to metal parts underneath your car, it traps moisture against the surface instead of letting it dry off naturally. If you live somewhere that salts the roads in winter, or somewhere near the ocean where salty air blows through constantly, that salt clings to the dirt and moisture as well. Salt and water together are one of the fastest ways to cause metal to rust, similar to how a metal fork left sitting in salty water overnight comes out covered in orange rust spots by morning. Some of the parts most at risk from this kind of buildup are surprisingly expensive to fix. Your exhaust system is often made from fairly thin metal, and rust can eat straight through it. Your suspension system, all the parts that let your wheels move up and down smoothly over bumps, sits low to the ground and takes the brunt of road grime every single drive. Once suspension bolts and joints get rusty, they can seize up completely, turning even a simple repair job into a nightmare of stuck, rusted bolts. There is one part of this that is genuinely dangerous, not just expensive. Brake lines, the thin metal tubes that carry brake fluid to your wheels, run right along the underside of the car where they take the worst of the dirt, water, and salt exposure. If a brake line rusts through, it can actually crack open while you are driving, causing brake fluid to leak out and your brakes to suddenly stop working properly. That is not a small inconvenience. That is a genuine safety hazard. There is also a second kind of buildup worth mentioning, and that is water spots on the outside of your car. If your car gets rinsed with hard water from a hose or a sprinkler and those water spots are never cleaned off, the minerals inside that water can slowly eat into your paint and clear coat over time, permanently etching the surface. Fixing damaged paint is never cheap. The fix for all of this is refreshingly simple. Wash your car regularly and make a point of rinsing the underside every so often too, especially if you live somewhere with salty roads or salty air. Even just spraying a hose underneath your car every few weeks can wash away a huge amount of that dirt and salt before it has a chance to cause real damage. And if you notice water spots forming, clean them off before they have time to etch into the paint. Here is where a habit that seems almost too simple to matter can actually save you thousands of dollars just by paying a little more attention. Habit 9. Ignoring the sounds. Your car is trying to make every car talks to you, not with words but with sounds, and most drivers have trained themselves to completely tune those sounds out. Here is the truth most people never hear. A huge number of expensive repairs start out as a small, cheap warning sign that gets ignored for weeks or months before it turns into something serious. A squealing sound when you brake often means your brake pads are wearing thin. Catch it early, and replacing the pads is fairly affordable. Ignore it, and that squeal eventually turns into grinding, which means metal is now scraping directly against metal, chewing up your rotors as well, turning a simple pad replacement into a much bigger, much more expensive brake job. A whining sound coming from your steering, especially when you turn the wheel, often means your power steering fluid is running low. Catch it early, and topping off the fluid or fixing a small leak is cheap and easy. Ignore it, and you risk completely burning out the power steering pump itself, which is a far more expensive part to replace. A hissing or whining sound near the front of the engine can sometimes point to a failing water pump, the part responsible for keeping coolant flowing through your engine. Catch it early, and replacing the pump is a manageable repair. Ignore it, and you risk running out of coolant entirely, which can cause your engine to overheat and blow a head gasket, one of the single most expensive repairs your engine can possibly need. Even a simple squeaking noise, the kind built into modern brake pads specifically as an early warning sound, exists purely to get your attention before real damage happens. Ignoring that tiny squeak because it does not seem urgent, is exactly how a cheap fix turns into a costly one. The fix here is really about mindset more than anything technical. When your car starts making a new sound, do not just turn up the radio and ignore it. Pay attention. Look it up, ask someone who knows cars, or get it checked out. Small sounds are your car's way of warning you before something breaks completely, and listening early is almost always far cheaper than waiting. This next habit is one that even careful drivers get wrong, and it slowly wears down a part of your transmission that most people do not even know exists. Habit 10. Never using your parking brake. A shocking number of drivers have a parking brake in their car that has not been used in years, sometimes not since the day they bought the car. They pull into their driveway or a parking spot, shift into park, and just hop out, letting the transmission alone hold the entire weight of the car in place. Inside your transmission, there is a small metal piece shaped almost like a hook called the parking pawl. Its entire job is to slide into the gaps between the teeth of a spinning gear and lock it in place so the car cannot roll. It is a genuinely small part, especially considering it can end up holding back the full weight of your entire car. If you park on even a slight incline, and almost every parking spot has some incline whether you notice it or not, your car will naturally try to roll a little bit. Since the wheels are locked by that tiny parking pawl instead of the parking brake, the full weight of your car ends up resting directly against that small piece. Next time you go to shift out of park, that pressure has to release all at once, which is why the gear shifter sometimes feels stiff or clunks loudly as it releases. Using your parking brake changes everything about this. The parking brake holds your car in place using the wheels themselves, the exact same way your regular brakes work, which are built specifically to handle that kind of pressure. That takes the weight completely off the tiny parking pawl, letting it do its job smoothly without any strain. Some drivers assume they do not need a parking brake because they live somewhere completely flat. Even then, skipping the parking brake causes a different problem. It is a mechanical cable running through a sleeve, connected by moving pivot points. Parts that never get used tend to seize up over time, the same way an unused hinge on an old door gets stiff and squeaky. If you suddenly need that parking brake in an emergency after years of never using it, there is a real chance the cable could snap, or the brake could jam and refuse to release properly. The proper way to use it is simple. Come to a full stop using your regular brake pedal, shift into park. Before you take your foot off the brake pedal, pull or press the parking brake. Then you can safely release the foot brake, knowing the weight of the car is resting on the parking brake instead of that small gear inside your transmission. Our final habit on this list might be the most surprising of them all, because it happens when your car is not even being driven at all. Habit 11. Letting your car sit unused for long stretches of time. You might assume that a car sitting perfectly still in a garage, untouched for weeks or months, is the safest possible thing you can do for it. No driving means no wear and tear, right? It is actually the opposite. Cars are built to be driven, and long periods of sitting still can cause a surprising amount of damage. The first thing that usually fails is the battery. A car battery slowly drains even while just sitting there doing nothing, and it can go completely flat in as little as a few weeks to a month. Once a battery has been drained flat and left that way, it is often permanently damaged even after you charge it back up. Next comes the engine oil. While a car is running, oil constantly circulates and coats all the moving metal parts inside the engine, protecting them. Once the car sits still for a long stretch, that oil slowly drains back down to the bottom of the engine, leaving the upper parts dry and unprotected. The very next time you start that engine, it runs for a moment with almost no protective oil coating those upper parts, which causes extra wear right at startup. Tires take a hit too. A tire holding the full weight of a car in the exact same spot for weeks or months can develop a flat spot, a small flattened patch where the tire has been resting the whole time, similar to how a stress ball left squeezed into one shape for a long time struggles to bounce back to its original round form. If the car sits outside for a very long time, the rubber can also dry out and crack. Your brake rotors are affected as well. Normally, the constant light contact between your brake pads and rotors during everyday driving keeps a thin layer of rust scrubbed off the rotor surface. When a car sits unused, that rust has nothing scrubbing it away, so it builds up a layer of surface rust, which can pit and damage the rotor underneath, leading to a rougher, less effective brake job the next time you drive. Even your wheel bearings, the parts that let your wheels spin smoothly, can develop rust while sitting unused for a long stretch, sometimes leading to a loud roaring or grinding sound the next time you take the car out on the highway. And then there is the fuel itself. Gasoline, especially the ethanol blends common today, slowly breaks down and goes bad over time when it just sits in a tank without being used. Old, degraded fuel can clog up injectors and damage your fuel pump. In colder climates, a fuel tank that is only partially full while sitting unused can even develop condensation inside it, which slowly rusts the tank from the inside and contaminates the fuel further. The fix here is simple, even if it takes a bit of extra effort. If you know a car is going to sit unused for a while, try to have someone start it up and drive it around the block every couple of weeks. Just a short drive is enough to recirculate the oil, recharge the battery a little, roll the tires out of their flat spot, and keep the fuel moving. That small bit of regular movement can add years to the life of a car that would otherwise slowly deteriorate while just sitting still. And there you have it, 11 everyday habits that seem completely harmless but can quietly cost you thousands of dollars over time. The wildest part is how normal every single one of these feels. None of them look dangerous in the moment. That is exactly why they do so much damage, because nobody thinks twice about them until the repair bill shows up. If this opened your eyes even a little, do me a favor and hit that like button, subscribe if you have not already, and turn on notifications so you catch the next video the moment it drops. And I want to know from you, out of these 11 habits, which one did you have absolutely no idea about until right now? Drop it in the comments below. If you liked this one, you will probably enjoy the video we made covering the strangest sounds your car can make and exactly what each one is trying to tell you. Go check that one out next.